So I'll just mention we're recording, and this is office hours session 2 about the BART, Ashby and North Berkeley planning process right now. And would like to, Charles, this is very informal, open it up for questions that you might have. This is really just to clarify things that you might have heard at the CAG meeting, or things that, observations based on that meeting that you want us to think about. And then we'll see who else jumps on.
Well, as you know from the discussion that we had, I had elucidated 3 points. That was, I was interested in how much money BART makes on the project. I also expressed that I thought we needed more meetings. And then I also asked to see whether BART had any more property in that 1 mile area. And I think you answered that. Outside of those 2 little parking lots at the North Berkeley BART, that in fact they don't have any other property within 1 mile of the 2 BART stations.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
For the last question. So I think we just talked about the second question as well in terms of more meetings, and we're trying to make sure and figure out how we can, either through the community meetings, add sessions, or make sure there's, homework or things that the CAG can do beforehand to make sure that there's enough time to go over materials. And we also heard the comment loud and clear that folks want more time. And I think in Zoom, we can do that either as a big group or as breakout sessions to get to know each other more and to have the CAG discuss more.
Thank you.
Shannon, can I ask you to talk more, or Rachel to talk more about Charles's first question?
Sure. Yeah, that could be more me, since I'm on the property development side at BART, whereas Rachel is on the planning side of things. So essentially, BART balances a desire to get some revenue from these projects to support our operations with the other goals and objectives that we have for the project. So I don't have the ability to share the screen right now, but you might remember that there was a slide that was shown at the first CAG meeting that was titled BART's Goals and Objectives for Berkeley TODs, and there's 6 elements of that, which you can also find in BART's TOD policy online on our website. And so, one of those is what we call value creation and value capture, that, includes having a project that is feasible, financially feasible, and that supports BART's operations. But then we also want to leverage outside funding sources, and particularly our experience has been that with affordable housing projects, there's sometimes the opportunity for us to apply for and get grant money from the state of California that is for these sort of package deals that include an affordable housing building and also transportation related improvements that together help the state advance its climate change goals of reducing vehicle miles traveled. So if there were to be a fully market rate project, then we are often looking for a market value from the land, or close to a market value, because we might subtract out some costs that it is more difficult to work with BART, right? We have infrastructure needs that need to be addressed. We have station access needs that need to be addressed. So it's probably never going to be like fully what that land would be if it wasn't BART land. However, at Berkeley, I think it's clear that there's a strong interest in affordable housing. And in fact, we have a 20% affordable housing requirement minimum at any station that has new housing added. So that's another thing that gets subtracted off of the proceeds that we might get from the land. And then, you know, we have, or there may be other goals that come from the community that may affect land value as well. So, so that's kind of a long answer. We don't have a dollar value that we're expecting to reap from the long-term leases of these sites. It's going to be, you know, our expectation, and what we will bring to our board of directors for their ultimate approval will be shaped by, you know, this balancing act between the goals and objectives that BART has, which and the goals that we hear from the community that emerge from this process, and then also what the market is able to provide as far as, you know, what's feasible, what real life developers think they can produce and make work and get financed.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question? I mean, so it's more like a
I
case
mean,
by case.
Yeah, it gives me a perspective. And at some point, hopefully we'll be able to zero it out, if you know what I mean. Because I'd like to have so many low or low income housing units as to basically wipe out any profit that anybody would make.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
Hi, Peter.
Hey, folks.
We were just answering some questions that Charles had. I think you probably caught the last bit of that, was just trying to understand how BART evaluates, you know, revenue or profit, what BART gets out of a project and how they evaluate that.
Got it.
So you know from the last session, we sort of have this fairly open, and it's driven by your, you know, people that are participating, comments and questions. So I'm opening it back up to you and Charles.
Well, and I'm really just was going to listen in a little bit. I just had a few moments. I thought I'd, you know, just be here. I don't know that I have additional subjects. I'm interested, Charles, hello. I'm interested in your thoughts and questions and personal perspective, the market's perspective on all this. But anyway, I'm kind of, I don't really have specific subjects today. It was, and I appreciated very much the discussion on Wednesday.
I mean, for the flea market, we have a lot of support both in the community and within the city. Elisa and Jordan and Kieran, Ben Bartlett have always, the mayor, are, you know, have publicly stated more than once that no matter what transpires, we will continue to exist in one form or another. The vendors are aware of that. I mean, you know, everybody wants more housing, but we have been there a long time. On a good day, we can have as many as 100 vendors, probably 90 of which would be people of color. The board is all people of color, except me. So all things being equal, somewhere between this project and what Elisa is working on with the Adeline Corridor project, you know, we envision having a home somewhere very close to where we are, but exactly where is to be determined.
Can you say a little bit about, sorry, Peter, did you want to?
No, I'm just nodding, and Charles, I'm all for that. I'm all for that. I mean, the flea market, and you know, been in the neighborhood a long time, so I've watched it over the years, and I shop there every chance I can. But I just think it's a kind of institution and cultural piece that, I don't know how you create it from scratch. So I think it's invaluable. So anyway, I support whatever we can do. Yeah.
Thank you.
How long has it been open again?
The flea market?
Yeah, when did you reopen?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
And we've had a little more each weekend. I mean, our long-term hardcore, which is about 30, they showed up and were out there. I went around and spoke to everybody. They were happy to be back and enthusiastic about the future. As we all are in these awkward times.
Are you hearing from people who haven't come back yet, like sort of the range of why or what their plans are?
Yeah, I mean, ranged from, we've heard that we'll get robbed if we come to the flea market because of all the riots, that type of planopy to hopefully this weekend, tomorrow when I go out, may there be 40 vendors there. Because actually we need about 50 to break even, so it puts us in an awkward situation. And as you all know, with the changing demographic in a neighborhood where when the market started and you could buy a house for $50,000, it now costs 1.3. And with the what I can only describe of as an invasion by Amazon, those trucks literally drive up and down the streets of the neighborhood surrounding the market, probably perpetually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And who knows about this, mask and social distancing 10 weeks from now. Who knows? I mean, we may all be wearing shields and gowns.
It did strike me walking around Charles last weekend, and I of course, I was at the market and I ended up buying masks. But it struck me that an outdoor shopping experience is kind of perfect, right? Because, ventilation is the whole story right now.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And, we're hoping to pick up people who, say we're primarily at some other little market. A lot of markets haven't come back.
Right.
We're sort of fortunate to be back. And like you say, being outside is the perfect environment for the future, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
That brought to mind just a question I haven't seen or been able to check in with my economic development colleagues, but you might know about the Tuesday farmers market that perhaps has been going on because of the food and essential aspect. I'm not sure if you two know.
Yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have one quick question for Charles, just in terms of the plan that Ronnie, the other consultant, worked on you with the market. Did that include a future component? It was a strategic plan, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, some months ago, Ronnie actually did a complete plan for us. Now, we actually coordinated a couple of times last week to come up with a strategy for the present moment.
Mhm.
And Ronnie worked with Kayla, and Kayla has been working from home. And so she got together with one of our other folks, and they sort of re-evaluated their social media presence and sort of tweaked it to the moment. Ronnie always has really good ideas to try. I mean, 2 of the 3 grants we got was because of ones that she steered us in that direction.
Mhm.
She does really good work.
And Ronnie, is she, Charles, a consultant for you guys or board
Yeah,
member?
Kieran and Jordan
Uh-huh.
from the Office of Economic Development.
Right.
They started doing things with Ronnie, and we were actually Ronnie's first client for the city of Berkeley.
Got
She
it.
runs an organization that you can find on, in any search engine. It's called Uptima, UPTIMA Boot Camp. And
Interesting.
they do really amazing work. She's really talented.
So that was part of OED's work to help small businesses, right? And particularly trying also to help South Berkeley's business institutions, businesses owned by African Americans. And so there was Ronnie Optima boot camp, or business boot camp, as well as Yvette Holtz, right, from
Oh, right, yeah.
Baobab. She also was doing help with engagement and outreach. And Yvette lives in the neighborhood, South Berkeley, so she's a resident too, and has been participating in our Adeline corridor meetings as well. All right.
As something I'm kind of curious about, and well, it's Juneteenth. Happy Juneteenth. You guys probably covered that already. But I'm, Charles, maybe you know something about, or Elisa. What's the status of our, future Juneteenth and the organization that organizes that? And I'm just going to say, side subject here in a way, but, our little group is kind of interested in supporting to any sort of local business, particularly the market, but we've been talking about there are ways to support Juneteenth in the future, the celebration. Anyway, I'm just curious what the status is. Obviously not happening today.
Yeah.
But in thinking about the neighborhood and this place, hopefully there's a place for Juneteenth right there. I would certainly make that a goal. But anyway, what do we know about that going forward?
OED works with them a fair amount, and they have different small grants from the city when they do put on that on the event. And so through Adeline, I've also had conversations with the Juneteenth organization. And so that's, Dolores Cooper and Kinshasa Taylor and a couple other folks Kenneth Tramiel, that I'm forgetting off the, and Sam Dyke, of course, had a huge previous, participation and worked with R.D. Bonds to help found the original event. So I think that since shelter in place and we, and the event and the meetings that we had to sort of get Adeline Corridor, the plan adopted, which will resume soon. I haven't had a lot of discussions recently with that organization, but definitely as we are moving forward, that's an organization that we want to reconnect with for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, good.
I guess if there aren't, I mean, it's up to you, like we are here, questions. We're here till 2, is that right? 12:30 to 2. And so I will leave that to you two, since you seem to be our prime and VIP attendees right now. Oh, Charles, you're on mute.
You know, I addressed my concerns, and I thank everybody for, you know, keeping them in mind. And Elisa, would you give my contact information to Peter?
Oh, of course.
So we can,
Yeah.
I think we're probably peers, so it would be interesting to meet each other.
Yeah, I'd like that, Charles. Thank you. Maybe I don't know if I'll be around tomorrow if you're strolling around the market. Are you there tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll be in and out. I'm
Anyway,
in
well,
and out every weekend.
yeah. But anyway, yeah, let's find a time to talk. And no, I'd be very interested. I'm you know, I'll just say that, you know, Charles, my shtick is housing. I'm an architect and I design housing and all kinds of housing, a lot of affordable housing. So I tend to see the world through that lens. But when I look at our neighborhoods and this neighborhood, our neighborhood, but neighborhoods in general, you know, the local business thing is such a critical thing and so hard, as you say, in the time of Amazon, other things. But so I'm really interested in how to almost the things in a way in this process that are honestly, I feel sort of most passionate about. I mean, I'm very interested in the housing, but the calming the streets down and helping out the local business scene along with the flea market. So, I'm just interested in what everyone's thinking about that. And I'm not an expert in it at all, except that I design a lot of buildings with ground floor space that struggles. So I'm always interested in what the creative thoughts are, and our little group, you know, our little South Berkeley Now group that I am part of, we are genuinely interested in if there are very specific actions that we can do to help events, modest fundraising. Anyway, I'm just having a kind of a direct conversation with you about this stuff.
I mean,
we can follow up on all that.
One of the things that has gone through our mind, you know, and we're looking at as many options as possible, is that the ground floor space, we would like to align ourselves with a nonprofit group and work for us to be the master tenant for the ground floor. This is actually the first time I've said this publicly. But, you know, when there's so much going on, it's important to have 2 or 3 different options in mind.
That's quite interesting. I won't share it. I'll let you, but you know, that's very interesting to me, because my feeling often is that this ground floor, it should be considered kind of quasi public space. And honestly, you know, even for market rate developers, and we do some of that work, they don't make any money on it. They don't really, in a lot of ways, care about it. They're all about the housing above. And somebody else really ought to take that space and manage it. And they ought to make it available for kind of a pretty low cost. I mean, I just think the whole ground floor rethinking of it as kind of a public benefit. It's like public open space or quasi anyway. Because if we just think it's all going to be conventional self-supporting retail at, you know, whatever dollars a square foot anyway. So I think that's a great thought. And but we need BART support in that
just a
conversation.
reminder that we do have our long list, and that's, you know, I guess, you know, subsidized space for community nonprofits, which could include, you know, the flea market is on the long list of types of desired uses and or community benefits, along with open space and the affordable housing that's desired. So it's on the list. Now, this process that you're about to embark on will definitely shed some more light on, like we were talking about, the time parameters and the costs, you know, and the funding sources, of course, as you know, that we'll have to look for to cover that, some subset or, you know, of that list.
Yeah. Right. Good. Anyway, Charles, I guess it'd be fun. Let's connect on the side and we'll
Thank you.
kick things around.
Okay, what I might suggest is if you think of other things, just jump right back on between now and 2, and otherwise you can email. We had just set the date a little bit arbitrarily, but just so that we can, you know, compile and summarize everything in time for the future meetings that we'll have. So comments by June 22nd. There's a, you know, of course you can send them to me, but we also have an email that we set up specifically for comments, which is bartplanning@cityofberkeley.info.
Thank you, Elisa. And thank you, BART representatives.
Elisa, I'm going to ask actually a quick thing. And seeing that we do have BART on, and I guess Shannon's on. You know, Abby mentioned on the call on Wednesday that BART was successful in this grant, in this federal grant, and I saw the news article about that. You know, I think that would be, and you guys are probably going to do that, but that would be kind of nice to provide an update, maybe a note to the CAG. You guys were already thinking about this, to the citizens group about that grant and what that potentially means in terms of being able to front load some of the station access stuff. And I realize timing is going to be a big issue. So, but there'll going to be lots of questions about that, and congratulations again, by the way.
Thank you. I think we should definitely provide an update on that. And we've also applied for the Caltrans grant, and that we'll have word on that very soon. That's we applied for another $1 million for that grant, and that grant is fully focused on access improvements for the corridor. So we hope to have some positive updates on that one too.
Yeah, great.
And we also just, I don't even know if I've mentioned this to Elisa yet, but we now have word on the ASIC grant, and we have received funding to do some access improvements at Ashby Station. So this will include a cycle track through the station and also improvements to wayfinding. So we'll provide an update on that one too.
That's great.
It's a good month for BART.
Good.
In that sense.
Yeah. Much needed. Yeah.
We needed some good news.
All right. Well, I probably will go ahead and sign off, but everybody have a good weekend.
All right, thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
All right, bye, Charles.
So many folks at my disposal for a minute to ask questions. Not a ton. I don't have tons of questions at the moment. A reflection and then a couple of like technical questions actually. So maybe I'll start with the technical ones. I'm curious. First question about how FAR, just jumping deep into it, how FAR is calculated on the site. In terms of is it actually calculated as the developable area, minus, the area minus tunnel zone of influence and every part of the site that kind of can't have a building on it? Or is it calculated as the, FAR over the entire site under consideration? So that's kind of the first question.
So I don't know if Rachel, you want to jump in with that. I can jump in with what I think my understanding is of it, and realizing that BART is coming out with their AB 2923 guidance document, I believe next week, which addresses this question. So is that okay, Rachel? I guess. I mean, okay. So I mean, I think my understanding is that AB 2923, talks about FAR over the project area, and that the way BART is interpreting that gives leeways to jurisdictions to define whether that includes the developable area or not. Is that right, Rachel, at the end of the day?
I think that's
Run.
right. Yeah.
Shannon, sorry. So I think we'll get some more information about that, but at the end of the day, I think that we are, that's one of the few things that jurisdictions will be able to define, because it wasn't absolutely clear.
Okay.
For the
Yeah,
text 2923.
I don't have a sense yet, but I hope that the consultants can help explain how much of a difference that would make. I don't know if this ends up being really a trivial difference in the types of buildings that you would see, or if it really could make quite a bit of difference. So that's just where it comes from. It's really just trying to understand how that could shape the possibilities that we're considering. Yeah, thank you for the.
Sorry, I was not very definitive, but just that we'll have to, like you said, analyze some different, the differences to be able to, since we do have leeway, I think, to define that one.
I mean, I think if there's, actually no definitive answer and it's open to local interpretation, that's fine. I mean, then that's the reality. And then it's just, I think we just need to understand then, like, what is that? What are the implications of that potential difference? And is it trivial or important? So that's fine. Thank you. Then, so second question that I had, and this was kind of brought up on the CAG meeting call, about the order of the transportation access, or the access study. I'm guessing Peter probably brought it up if he was on earlier, since he chimed in about that too. That's just been a concern of mine. My reason for that is that it really seems like, without understanding the full range of things that we could do, and actually thinking kind of beyond what's possible now, but really thinking kind of super big picture and thinking more sort of regionally, or at least in the kind of north end of this BART line corridor, we could easily get into like kind of a false trade-off scenario with parking affordability and cost, where we're assuming that we sort of have, you know what I mean? Like we're sort of assuming conditions as we understand them today, when the study itself is required to really like understand what the future possibilities are. So that was my concern there from the conversation in the meeting. I was super excited to see that it looks like FDA or the Federal Transportation Administration gave BART the grant to do some of this work. So that was super cool.
Yeah, I think, I mean, your comment is well taken, and this definitely, the grant definitely gives us more options. Before, when we couldn't guarantee or say beyond the money that we have for the Van Meter and Kittleson team that we knew for sure, you know, would be able to do some level of access study. But now, and Rachel, I saw you unmute yourself. You wanted to speak to that. That gives, I mean, we're going to have more options.
Yeah, I think I was going to repeat some of what you said, and then I think we mentioned during the meeting that we've also applied for a Caltrans grant, and we should have official response about that sometime very soon. And the funding for that would likely be available before the FTA grant, and we applied for $1 million for that grant. So hopefully we'll be able to get some of the access work started within this time frame. You know, but we do definitely need to have some more resources before we can really move forward and full force on that. We also we're in the process of doing a Caltrans funding grant access study for Cerrito Plaza, where we're advancing COG as well. And we're looking at things there, like we're about to start the second phase of that, which is looking at potential for a parking management district around using the city streets around the station. And we'll see what we find there. It's basically going to be, we don't have a ton of funding, so it's not going to be a real detailed, super in-depth analysis, but it will give us some high-level sense of what's possible there. And El Cerrito is different because they really don't have anything now. Berkeley at least has a parking management structure, and that works fairly well. So, you know, we would try to see what we learn from that, and then apply what we can, and potentially initiate discussions with the city to see if there's even appetite for something like that. So there will be some lessons that we're learning from El Cerrito that we're doing now that will hopefully apply to this work in the near term.
Great, thank you. I have two more small technical questions, and then one process thing, and then that's it. So the next technical question is, how, if at all, does the CAG's recommendations for streetscape improvements and projects associated with the stations turn into things that the city of Berkeley actually does? So does that exist as something that's like, you know, this is a nice imaginative exercise that we're doing to really make the BART stations as development projects work, but there's some stuff that's kind of out of scope of that would be like adjacent, let's say, you know, on Ashby, or let's say in the northern parking lots north of the North Berkeley BART. Is that sort of just like ideas that are taken under advisement by the city, or do they really, like, can they carry forward, or how would they carry forward as projects if they kind of are like things that are needed to make the BART developments kind of work as the CAG would suggest?
Yeah, I mean, I would hope, and this is something that, you know, we can talk about and present back more at the next CAG meeting. But since we talked about how the CAG will give recommendations about development parameters and zoning, I mean, the thing that, you know, that would feed into an eventual RFP. I think that you know, in terms of good planning and best practice for planning, anything that is discussed along the lines of things that would make the overall development and like sort of master planning exercise work would be I mean, they would be included as like the package of recommendations or ideas that move forward for the CAG. how that, and of course, City of Berkeley and transportation staff and public works staff would, be looking at this and weighing in about this. I think that would just be looked at in relation to, similarly as we're doing with the Adeline Corridor specific plan, like there's this list of improvements and recommendations, and then implementation would need to be, tracked and moved forward, and funding would need to be found, and like planning and phasing. So I don't think they would be, I think they would be captured. But it's an interesting question just in terms of what you're asking. It's not like there's a specific plan per se. So we just would think about like what that package looks like.
Yeah, exactly. It's more of a process thing. Like how does it get incorporated into the city's planning and funded, since it's not, like for example, I'm just, say like redesigning Ashby to accommodate the flea market, for example, like if that's sort of something that's needed in order to make the development site work in a more efficient, logical way, then that becomes another project that is like maybe not part of the redevelopment project, but is actually then becomes a city project, but then is required to unlock the development project. So to the extent that you start getting these like spin-off projects that need to happen to unlock the true potential of the development, how are those projects taken seriously on their own terms, and like how do they get moved ahead? So,
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that to the extent that they are critical pieces to make the development work, they'll be reflected in the package of guidance, and that goes, correct me if I'm wrong, Abby or Shannon, but I'd imagine that would go in the guidance of like the developer solicitation, because any developers that would propose would want to know that's a serious constraint or important factor to making the development work. So there's some things that'll definitely be a part of the package of development, those kind of development parameters. But I can see what you're saying in terms of like if there's additional like streetscape stuff that maybe that isn't essential or critical to the development parameters, but they are like a want to have kind of thing, like we would want to capture that too and just figure out figure out how to move that forward, where maybe it's like the whole package of recommend, maybe it is like a plan for the area. But anyway, that's a good point. I hadn't quite, and we'll have to think about like how, if it's not in the RFP and if it's not the zoning, but there's additional recommendations, that it's sort of like the master plan or something like that, or.
Yeah, exactly. Where does that live?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Cool. Well, I think I forgot my other technical questions, so it must not be important. But just the last thing was more just on process, and the last moments of the CAG meeting. This issue about sort of decision making and process got brought up. I'm guessing you probably had some conversations with other folks in the office hours about it, and I just wanted to just kind of reflect on my reflection on that is that I really don't know what the right thing is. I don't have a recommendation, but I am very curious about, what you all are thinking about what the right way to do that is. And I think maybe just that it does feel like some strong conversation facilitation is needed, at least to provide some structure about like how we debate these things, especially where there's not unanimity, and there's just like honest disagreement or different values. I thought Bernali's like prod was really good. It was like, don't waste this opportunity to like have a really like kind of honest and courageous and difficult conversation, but then get something out of it. So let's not have this just be kind of like a community group listening to a lot of things and then sort of airing their opinions, but like really kind of use us to to have the hard conversation, at least to advance the ball forward a little bit, even if we don't kind of come to a unanimous agreement on things. So that's all I've got. I don't have any more like suggestions. I wish I did.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a point well taken. And that is something that we're working with Van Meter and Plan to Place team to have some, good proposals and structures in place for you all to hear about, in the next meeting. But you'll definitely be talking about trade-offs and like hard questions.
Good. Cool. Well, that was it on my agenda. But yeah, just wanted to pop in and see how these office hours were going. Thanks for making time and sitting in and waiting for folks to drop in. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, this was very helpful, and just kind of underscores the fact that, in future meetings, we're thinking about ways that CAG members can have more time to talk to each other and get to know each other, because it seemed like that was helpful in the first set of office hours with the 4 folks that joined.
Yeah, I don't know what the flow is going to be like at the next CAG meeting. I mean, I think the format of everyone, on and talking to each other is pretty formal and awkward on Zoom. I mean, it is in person too, but I don't know if like you can, if you're allowed to do breakouts, but that has been a helpful way to do some Zoom meetings that I've been on to get some just one-on-ones or small groups going. So I would be happy to participate in something like that.
Okay. I think that's definitely on the list of stuff that we want to try.
Cool.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's it for me, but thank you. And yeah, have a great weekend.
All right.
You too. Thanks.
Okay. Cool.
Thank you.
Okay, ciao.
Bye. All right.
All right. It's good that we stayed on and